Good morning, everybody, and welcome to the very first episode of the United Diaries. This is a new series that I'm starting on the channel, and it is different to the MJCRM podcast, which covers current news. This is going to be more special moments which I have witnessed in the past involving Manchester United, be it cup finals, derbies, signings, things like that. Things that have just made me happy as a United fan, and things that I just want to share my feelings for. We're going to get right into it. So today we're going to be discussing that night in Moscow, the Champions League final of 2008 against Chelsea. At this point, Manchester United were chasing their third Champions League crown, whereas Chelsea were going for the very first, and were clearly the two best sides in Europe at the time. Obviously, we had that front three of Tevez, Rooney, and Ronaldo, which, in my opinion, is probably the best front three in Premier League history. Forget the current Liverpool one; they wouldn't stand a chance against that Manchester United team, which won the double that year. And obviously, we're up against a very good Chelsea team as well, which had obviously Frank Lampard, Didier Drogba, Petr Cech. So it was a very good team we're up against. It wasn't going to be easy. I actually do remember before the match happened, we obviously qualified first after knocking out Barcelona. And I remember seeing an interview in the news with some fans, and they were actually saying that they would rather play Liverpool in the final because they thought it'd be easier than Chelsea, which is quite a strange thing to say given how well Liverpool have done in the Champions League in the past. And at that point, it was only a few years ago that they'd won it. So to say that they'd rather play Chelsea in the final was quite strange to hear. This was about just over 12 years ago now, that final. So I would have been around 13 years old, which is a bit ridiculous to think about. It doesn't feel like it was that long ago, but I remember being allowed to sit up and watch it, despite having school the next morning and it going all the way to penalties. Obviously, it was that long ago, and I don't remember too much of the build up or anything like that. But we all knew that at this point, this was Ronaldo's real season where we thought, okay, he's a serious player, and he was the best in the world at the time, despite Messi coming through as well. It was obvious that Ronaldo at this point was ahead of him due to the amount of goals he scored. This was the season when he got 40 plus goals in all competitions, which was ridiculous. It was an absolute joy to watch that season. So I remember thinking at the time that we were going to walk it purely because we had Ronaldo, and that couldn't have been further from the truth. So obviously, in the first half, we dominated. Um, we obviously had so many chances, and probably should have taken a bigger lead early on in the game. Obviously, Ronaldo scored that fantastic header where he seemed to leap about 10 foot in the air, and put that away reasonably early in the game. At that point, we all thought, oh, we're going to run away with it, and it just didn't happen. And we didn't really make the most of the chances we had between the end of the half. And obviously, Frank Lampard scored on the stroke of half time, which brought it level to 1-1. For the next 45 minutes, and it's fair to say that Chelsea dominated that game, but they were very wasteful. I remember Lampard hitting the bar, um, you know, well, and obviously not making the most of that opportunity. I've actually got the stats up in front of me just now, and they're quite remarkable. We actually only had 11 shots in the entirety of that game, and only five of them were on target. Compare that with Chelsea, who had 18 shots with only three on target. So we were actually better at hitting the target, but again, we didn't make the most of the chances either. Um, I don't remember too much of the second half. All I really remember is kind of Chelsea dominating and obviously not making the most of the chances as the stats show. It goes into extra time and it is very tight. But obviously that moment happened on 116 minutes where Didier Drogba, for some reason, thought it'd be a good idea to slap Nemanja Vidic and got himself sent off. And that is really the point where some people say this is where Chelsea lost the final because, as I'll come to later, it's not going to be a surprise to anyone what happened, but they all say, well, he would have taken that penalty and it wouldn't have been John Terry. Um, most of the dreaded penalties after a tight affair. To be honest, because extra time was a bit of a nothing. I wouldn't really say either side dominated it from memory. But obviously we dominated the first half. Chelsea scoring half time because we were quite wasteful. And then obviously Chelsea dominated the second half, but don't get that second goal. So in total, each side took 7 penalties. Obviously, we stepped up first, with Tevez scoring and then Michael Carrick scoring his. And then, of course, of all people, Ronaldo, who we expect to just finish it off, does that strange run up where he runs, stutters, and then, Petr Cech saved it. And at this point, you think, oh no, Chelsea are probably, going to run away this year, particularly because Ballack scored, Belletti scored, Lampard comes up and scores straight afterwards. Ashley Cole also scored. Luckily, after that, Owen Hargreaves stepped up and finished his off as well quite coolly. And he was a very underrated player, in my opinion. But he managed to obviously step up, take that penalty, and score it. And then we had to score our next penalty, and Nani luckily did score his. That was a bit of a dodgy one, not necessarily reliable, but he did manage to do it. Then Ashley Cole stepped up and obviously got his as well. After Nani, it was down to Mr. John Terry, Mr. Chelsea himself. I won't go into what I think of him, but I'm sure you can all guess. Steps up, and if he scores, Chelsea win the Champions League. 5 out of 5 penalties, and it doesn't sound too bad, does it? For them anyway. 5 out of 5 penalties is fantastic, particularly since it's their first Champions League final. He steps up, it's pouring with rain. You can just see, I can still see his hair. It's like, soaking. It's kept soaking. The ground is really slippy, as you know. He steps up to take it, and he falls over, slips, and it goes wide, which is just as well, really, because it probably would have went in had it been a bit closer. 3 misses and there's jubilation, and I remember thinking at this point, we've got this. This is our final now. We will go on and do it. So after that, Anderson steps up, scores his, and then obviously Salomon Kalou redeems himself, scores his. Then you think Ryan Giggs, you think surely he's going to score. He does. His experience, was just so telling. He was quite calm. He just did the job. And then up steps Nicolas Anelka, a striker, a very good player in his day, and you just think he's not going to miss it. But he steps up and then takes his shot. It's a bad penalty, to be honest, and Van der Sar saves it. And I just remember jumping up in the living room and screaming my head off because we'd won the Champions League. This was the first real final that I was able to appreciate at that age. Obviously, I followed United before, but not to the same extent. I was, not really into sitting and watching football, not into playing it out with my friends and teams and so on. This was the first year where I'd really watched it, and I think it's also because of how good my team were at the time. And I was just so happy. And as soon as we won it, I was allowed to sit and watch them lift the trophy, which was unbelievable. Seeing Sir Alex Ferguson out there really happy about it. It was great to see him win another trophy. And I was then told to go to bed and couldn't sleep. And then I remember going to school the next day, and obviously, like I live up in Scotland, but everybody supported like an English team as well. Mine was United, and there was a couple of Chelsea fans. I remember absolutely laying into them, and they were telling me, "Oh, it's only on penalties. What you so happy about?" And I remember saying, "Well, if you'd have won in penalties, would it have just been penalties?" And they just kind of looked at me, and it was absolutely fantastic. I still to this day have not enjoyed winning a trophy as much as that. It was absolutely brilliant, and we deserved it. We were clearly the best team in Europe that year. I talked about the front three earlier, but if you think of the defence, Ferdinand, Vidic, Evra, Gary Neville, and Van der Sar, who was an absolutely brilliant goalkeeper. A midfield, Scholes could still do a job at that point. Owen Hargreaves, very underrated player. We also had Giggs in there. He could play in the wings. Nani, that season was quite good, but I think Ronaldo kind of covered up for his sort of failings. But yeah, it was just an absolutely great time to be a United fan. And since then, it's gone downhill. To be honest, I know the next year we did obviously reach the final again and we won the league, but it wasn't as convincing and not as enjoyable. Anyway, this is kind of my first real great memory of Manchester United. I was too young to remember anything before that, like Ruud van Nistelrooy and things like that, but this was just absolutely fantastic. And I thought this would be the first, the perfect episode to start off. This has been a bit raw to start off with. I will get better as these go on, but I just wanted to share my thoughts with you on that Champions League final because it's a great memory of mine. If you have any memories, ideally since then, because that's what I'll remember, that you want me to talk about, please let me know. Otherwise, I'll see you in the next video. Cheers, bye.